there's a level and intensity of like ambiguity and fear of the unknown that you have to train as an entrepreneur. The hardest thing as a CEO, not really like a mechanical certain thing, but to identify what to work on and when and in the order of the sequence is the biggest challenging thing. Business is a art of, relationships, of being human, right? Understanding and kind of like going to the core of like understand what they're looking for, what the pain point is, what the main solution that they're looking for is, so on and so forth. Where to bring up price, where to bring up budget, so to speak.
But basically, you're still a service-based organization,
right?
And one of the hardest things about service-based organizations is scaling,
right?
And finding good people, good talent, processes, and then doing it in a sustainable way. What has been the hardest part of that to get you to prep yourself for a potential sale?
You learn business, but if you zoom out, business is an asset. So the game is learning how to build an asset, how to sell an asset, and then phase 2 is learn how to acquire more assets, the level of the assets that you're acquiring, and then continue to.
Welcome to the Caravan Podcast. In today's episode, we're joined with Hamza Abdallah, the founder of CATA Leads. We're going to find out how he immigrated here as a young boy of 8 years old and finding out what he wanted to become. From a pursuit of desiring to be in the military to finding his calling in entrepreneurship and him embracing fully his Muslim identity. We find that his journey at the University of Texas, Austin, how he found mentorship and guidance from a fellow entrepreneur that was years ahead of his time, gave him the courage and the confidence to really fulfill his vision of being an entrepreneur now. And lastly, his goal that he's setting currently of exiting his business and selling CATA Leads. Welcome to the podcast. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Caravan Podcast. Today we're joined with none other than Hamza Abdallah here locally in Dallas. You're the Bengali John Wick to my eyes, man.
Oh man, that's I'll take that. I'll take that.
It's a hard title to live up to, but it's one that I never thought I would ever put those two words together in my mind. And I'll leave the audience to that as to what that means, but definitely check out his Instagram and his socials. You get to quickly understand on all the things that he embodies in a meaningful way and in a practical way. But beyond that, you're also very much an entrepreneur, and not so much recently, but for a very long time of your life. I think when you first came up on my feed, I think you were at UT Austin, hook 'em horns.
Yes, sir.
Throwing that in whenever I can. And I remember you like speaking with students while being a student, and working with folks in Austin in a high caliber and a respected way. And so I'm really excited to kind of sit down with you and how you started your journey. And that led you to now essentially being a founder of a company, particularly with CATA Leads, and how you've been leading that as a young leader with a team that is, diverse, both religiously and ethnically as well. And so, I think it's a really cool opportunity that you have. And I mean, from the outside, looks like you've done a really great thing. So thanks again for being on the podcast and
Appreciate you, man.
Allowing us to learn from you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys.
So with that, let's get into it. Starting at UT Austin, did you grow up actually in Texas or elsewhere in the States? Like, how'd you end up at Austin?
Yeah, actually, no, I did not. I grew up for my later half of my life, so to speak, here. But I actually was born in Bangladesh. My father was in the Bangladesh Army. You met my father, and
that's
so
something y'all relate on as well.
Yes, sir. So he was he was a high-ranking officer. He's a general in the Bangladesh Army, retired as Major General. So
he's still very active of a person. I see him. I mean, when I see him in the gym, I'm like, dang, he's
very much.
Man. I see him more than I see you, man. Where you at?
Bro, we need to change that. Man. But no, Allahumma barik. Yeah, he's very much active. But because of that means and growing up in a military family, alhamdulillah, we've gotten the ability to move around quite a bit. And by the age of 13, I think I've been over to like 11 or 12 countries. And that in itself introduces a lot of perspective. So to answer your question, how we ended up in Austin, Texas, or Dallas, Texas. We moved here around 2009. So, towards the end of my father's career, we decided to move here for, just college opportunities and just establishing a new base.
What caused that exit? Because I mean, you're coming in at the golden era of
Yeah.
America, which is the end of a financial crisis.
Yeah.
People are trying to get out. Why are you trying to?
Right.
Why are you coming in?
Why are we coming in? Well, that in itself is a little bit of a story, but now, granted that we have seen everything that has happened in Bangladesh with the regime change and whatnot, I think people will understand a little bit more. My father, you've met my father.
Yeah.
He's unwavering, firstly in his deen, secondly in his patriotic endeavor. So he was actually a very high-ranking officer in the military, general, and also head of military intelligence. So now that everything is over with the regime in place at that time, Hasina government, there was a lot of corruption in that era.
Yeah.
And my father was someone that couldn't be bought, obviously. So that in itself kind of transpired into things that could that happened, and we had to leave. And that's why alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, at that time it was like, why is this happening? It was a trial, it was a test for my family, but alhamdulillah, like, look at everything that has happened since then, and just goes to show you, man, Allah's plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add some context, but it is being principled in values is not the best place at times. And corruption happens everywhere. It's not exclusive to Bangladesh before people jump at, other countries. America does it better, just more loopholes. But yeah, like I remember growing up around like 2004, I think there was an incident where I think they pretty much just murdered like 5 or 6 high-ranking officers near Dhanmondi. Now, for whatever reasons that I don't really know, but it is a thing that of concern, right? If you're not falling towards that particular regime's agenda.
Oh yeah.
And these aren't agendas that are beneficial to the people, by the way. This is like actually just like backdoor deals,
of course,
that's being done with other nations to deepen their own
India
pockets.
Specifically.
Exactly. And so that's a huge shift, especially at a young age and coming to the US. What was surprising for you? Were you looking forward to it? Because I think there's this glitter and glamour coming to America, right? Ooh, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, right? So like, what were you thinking? Were you thinking you're gonna be at like the Painted Ladies in San Francisco, like Full House?
That's funny, man. Honestly, for me, I was, at that time, granted, we moved around a lot by that age. Living in Bangladesh was more of a out of the norm event and circumstance for me, because I didn't grow up there. Going to school was there was different, and everything was different. Alhamdulillah, I can say that my roots are from there. I very much so, still identify as Muslim first and then Bangladeshi, and remember a lot from there. But I didn't grow up there for a large part of my life, right? So when we had moved back to Bangladesh after my father's posting in Kuwait, I was very much so like in the process of getting used to Bangladesh, right? So at that time, I didn't really understand the full scope of what was happening. I just knew we had to move somewhere. I was a little bit more so looking forward to it, because in Kuwait, where I started schooling in a British school and then in American school. So so I was kind of like I wasn't taken aback. It was going to be a whole different country and
it's
whatnot.
just another day of change.
It's another day. It was more so a little bit exciting. I was like, I think I will be able to fit in, or maybe just understand the norms a little bit better, because I started schooling in an American school. But yeah,
was it tough?
How old were you in this time period?
I was, so that all that happened around 2008, 2009, so around 8 or 9. Yeah. So I was.
You didn't really get a choice.
I didn't really get a choice.
You're on cruise control. I'm assuming this is harder on your elder siblings.
Oh,
right?
100%.
That's more of a shift for them, because they're like teenagers, late teens potentially, right?
Of course.
So you're in Dallas then. You're making your.
I actually moved to Maryland first.
Oh, Where in Maryland?
I was in Silver Spring.
Okay, gotcha. And how's it like being there? I think I know I have a lot of family in, I'm forgetting the name, in Maryland. I'm blanking.
Montgomery County, PG County,
Ellicott
Baltimore.
City.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remember there being a decent amount of Bengalis, but I only visited here and there. But I guess what was your time like in Maryland? Did you like the North?
I liked it, man.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was very different than Texas, but once you go Texas, you never go back,
That's
bro.
fair.
You know what I mean?
What brought you guys down south?
Cost of living. My father, being my father, like when he came and we started like scouting for where to kind of plant our flag. At that time, Texas was. I mean, it still is now. Like cost of living is comparatively way better, way like on the up and up. Where the North is a little bit more developed and mature. So you, in order for a family that is uprooted from Bangladesh to come here and kind of grow your foundations, I think Texas. We checked out Georgia. We checked out a few other states, Florida.
Yeah.
Texas being Texas.
Were you guys like?
here.
Did your dad find work here? What was he doing? Because I feel like that's a huge shift.
I think he. I'm not entirely sure. I was a little bit young. I do remember recollection here. Like he had a business at one point with one of his cousins, and then ultimately he worked and then ended up retiring fully after working with the UTA PD police department. Yeah. And then so a few kind of jobs here and there, businesses here and there. A lot of hard work for the parents, first generation parents.
What was the nature of the business that he was working on?
I think it was he established his own security company at one point, and then also with one of his family members. I think it was like a convenience store that he had a stab at. Actually, in Maryland, he had a stab at like a halal pizza and wings store as well. So you got to do what you got to do, man. I think that encompasses.
That's the definition of a true hustler, immigrant. Like. Whatever needs to get done.
Wore multiple hats. You know what I mean?
Yeah, wings. I like that.
Wore multiple wings. But I think that in itself, man, like was kind of fuel to the fire when my consciousness started developing as a human, as like and also the essence of life. Like Allah is the one to grant you maqamat, like position, and also the one to take away in with His hikmat. So to see my father, who at one point used to lead thousands of men in the military, to wear the hat of delivering pizzas at one point, and to doing this and doing that, or even working at a police department and reporting to someone who has maybe a fraction of the experience he has. You know what I mean? Where you have to bite the bullet. All those sacrifices. Also the concept of lesson of like Allah's plan reigns overall. When you're going through the test, you don't see that perspective, but when you're at the other end of it, that's all when it makes sense. 2020 is hindsight. Hindsight is 2020. Yeah.
And it's a huge lifestyle change too, right? Coming from in a very respected and valued position in Bangladesh, and then coming here and starting wherever, right? Your quality of life and what the unknown is. Now you make it down to Dallas, eventually, and were you entrepreneurially leaning as well? Like growing up, like did you have like businesses that you tried in high school even, or?
I mean, I think everyone can attest to at some point selling snacks,
chips
and sodas, but not really, brother. I mean, we were, I think. I always say this, like my internal identity as it kind of developed was more so a strong sense of standing up against injustice and fighting for the sake of the oppressed and fighting against the oppressors. That's kind of like that identity of a mujahid as a Muslim, right? Of a soldier of Allah. But that transpires differently when you can't enter the battlefield at this time, in this during day and age. May Allah use us in the ways that He sees fit, inshallah. I mean, so at that time, I didn't really know that I was going to go down the road of entrepreneurship. I had a set of skills that I had seen, not myself, but many people kind of acknowledge, which is the ability to organize and lead and speak. Alhamdulillah, all credit due to Allah. I take nothing for it. And I thought I was going to go down the route of military or maybe intelligence. Maybe in high school, I was, specialty-based high schools in Irving. I went to Jackie Singley. I was in the Homeland Security specialty. So I thought I was going to go down the route of FBI, CIA. Yeah. Granted, at that time, I'm still a high schooler. Right. I don't know the 10,000
global context. Yes.
Exactly. I don't know the global, but like that overarching internal fitra of wanting to do good and fight for good was there.
The propaganda of U.S. military branches, by the face value of the propaganda, you think you're doing great.
Right, of course, yeah.
So as a high schooler, when Marine comes in, how many pull-ups can you do?
Yeah,
Like, I can do many. Go America. completely different persona of like what you
Right.
find out, what is now reality,
Of course.
as to what those things are actually facilitating,
Of course.
and doing, right?
Yeah.
So how do you go from that to, obviously you're very talented, I mean, and also educated, like going to school and then getting into Austin as well. Like, how did you transition to your career path, and when did you have the realizations like, oh, I want to do those things, but
Yeah.
not for that team?
Yeah. I was, yes, the intention, the Nia was there. I
Yeah.
just didn't know the team that we were playing for. But, and bro, as a naive high schooler, like, like when you're, and you know me, you said Bangladeshi John Wick, right? So always has this fascination with warfare, martial, arts.
Yes, yeah.
So to speak. So the motto of the American Special Forces is "De oppresso liber," right? So
Yeah.
at face value, like you said,
Exactly.
it's free the oppressed, right? So I just didn't know how to associate it with it, and then I would love to talk about Muslim Turkish shows eventually, because that's when I visualize what that means. We can get into that later. But to answer your question, I will go back to the answer of Allah's plan, bro. I still remember at UT freshman year, still carrying on that intention from high school. I thought I was going to go down that route. I went to like a CIA info session as well.
what is that,
UT Austin, just some context, is the best Arabic program in the nation.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know the
UT,
reason.
man.
Yeah, it's
They're
UT.
the best at everything, right?
But with that
Don't
one,
say that.
I could say that at least. We're not A&M where we say everything's number one there. But with Arabic, it is one of the best ones, and so actually a lot of CIA and a lot of the ops
They
go
recruit.
through there. I mean,
Yeah.
even I don't know if I think the previous head of CIA was also a UT graduate.
Wow.
And so it is a pipeline. It's a very strong pipeline.
And by their standards, like I'm textbook one of their, textbook.
You'd be a great person on
Muslim,
Mossad.
brown
You'd be
beard. They can use
yeah.
me to mess up our own people. But
Yeah.
anyways,
well, I mean, particularly in Bangladesh, they've been fighting tooth and nail to open up a
Right.
naval base there for the
Yeah.
United States to further its imperialist needs. But that's
The
another
U.S.
topic.
is doing that with Bangladesh.
They've been trying for a while. Yeah.
may Allah help us resist against
Yeah,
that.
I mean.
But yeah, man, I mean, I think it was more so venturing down the path of what my intuition led me down to. So at that moment in time, I was like, you know what? Okay, I think I'll figure out what that transpires into. For now, let me solidify the conventional route, majoring in finance, go down management consulting, get into like a top 3. So on paper, credentials wise, credibility wise, and execution wise, I had everything I needed to land a Deloitte internship, Accenture, McKinsey, Bain. And I would go to, and I tell the story all the time, and looking back on it, just more so it reinforces my trust in Allah. I would go to this last round of interview. Always, everyone loves me. It's like I'm gonna get this, right? And then for some reason or the other, I don't get it. Like why? You know what I mean? It just didn't make sense. And I explicitly remember eating lunch at Jester, and I get the rejection letter for McKinsey. If I got that internship in freshman year, just imagine like the trajectory of my life would have been so different. Just settled. Go down that route, whatever. But it was after that I had met CJ Finley, one of, I regard to as my elder brother and mentor on the path. And it was, at that time I had a side hobby of doing photography, videography. My start in the game was actually photography and videography. Shout out Ramiz. Yes, sir. So I was like, you know what? Summer's coming up. Let me see how to make more money. And CJ was throwing a how to grow on social media panel. And that's where I end up going, meeting him, light sparks. And then, the rest of the story we can go down.
And I want to highlight, I mean, CJ isn't Muslim, but you guys share so much of similar characteristic and nature, I feel, in
100%.
like the naturism that you guys embody,
Yeah.
which is this very sincere sense of like high level accountability and an extreme level of discipline, right? And I think one thing I really appreciate about CJ as a fan, and I guess now I formally met him at your wedding, and so is his ability to acknowledge areas where he knows he's being resistant against, but he's still willing to like, okay, let me try it out this. Like running was a great example that he didn't really run a lot, but now he's a phenomenal runner. And I think even with his business, he's such an engineer. It's very amusing. But he like looks at his process, looks how he can be better, and does what the best he can do with the numbers that he has. And I think what really made me, I always liked the guy, but I think what made me love the guy was when I met him at your wedding, and how he thinks about fatherhood and how important it is for him. And you know, I was joking with him at the time. I was like, bro, you're doing a lot of Muslim things right now. You're not drinking. Like, I hope you know that. But no, like an incredible person. How is having him as one of, like, I guess, an early mentor?
Right.
Were you very close with your faith throughout your whole life? Was that more of like in your middle, late 20s? Like, how were you kind of navigating that?
Yeah, the execution was there. The ritualistic practices were there, but I think the depth, obviously everyone goes through their own journey, kind of materialized, I would say during COVID, more so to speak. But then I would say it was a chapter in my life where Allah was teaching me the sabab, the means, right? That would gear me up. Then when the spirituality side of it were attached, then I knew to make sense of it. So that phase of hanging around, mobbing around with CJ was learning the sabab, the means. You know what I mean? And yeah, man, to your point, I think I wholeheartedly believe CJ's a Muslim and he just doesn't know it yet. Inshallah. May Allah grant him hidayah. Yeah, man. I mean, he's a brother, man. I love that guy. But yeah, that phase was just more so soaking up as much as I can. And alhamdulillah, man, I think summer going into sophomore year was the internship that I did with him that kind of transpired into a unspoken partnership where he kind of took me under his wing. Just by hanging around with CJ gave me that associated clout, so to speak.
Yeah.
That you could, you know, you're skipping scenes in a movie. Alhamdulillah, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of skipped light years in my social network in Austin just by hanging around CJ, alhamdulillah. And he allowed me, and he was selfless enough to allow me to leverage his platform, alhamdulillah, right? So
how'd you debate that decision, right? Because you're an immigrant, you came here, you worked hard, your family worked hard, you got the grades, you got into an incredible school, and you are not going down a corporate route of doing any consulting firm, regardless of which was, because if you're getting final interviews for those, there's going to be some B team consulting firm that would be like, most people would be like, I'm going to go into that instead. Right. But you're going way off the mark. And what was the decision process?
Good question, man. And I think, you know, there's a little bit of tact on CJ's side as well, because he needed someone like me to mob around with him to elevate his social brand with an intern, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he framed it in a way, now me looking back, I understand the game he played, not in a negative connotation way, but I was naive.
But it's mutualistic.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I wanted to...
Can you expand on that?
Yes. So I wanted to... He knew that I wanted to go down the consulting route at that moment in time, right? I thought, like, because I thought that was the right way to go.
And so for context, CJ... also was a corporate person becoming an entrepreneur. So he's older. He knows where you're at. He knows.
Experienced, worked at UBS and whatnot. So at that moment in time, and we still have the GoPro footage of me meeting with him for the first time. And I can see you can see his wheels turning when he makes the offer for the internship. But I wanted to grow a business. That meeting was revolving around like business advice. How do I get a consulting internship, whatnot, right? So, and then you see CJ's face like turning for a second. He was like, you want to be my intern, right? And then he framed it in a way where it's like, hey, work with me this summer. You will get 10x the experience that your peers are getting at Accenture or Deloitte just by hanging around me, because my clients are actual business owners in the trenches getting stuff done. By the time that your peers are pushing papers and decks up the management, you will see the effect of what you're doing. So he kind of framed it as like,
that's
hey,
the truth.
Work with me, you will get the experience that you want, and if you want to go down McKinsey, like you'll have very good experience, right? So that was his framing. So now I acknowledge that. But at that time, to answer your question, Naveed, I didn't have anything at that moment, you know? And summer is there, right? Time is like, clock is out, and we're brown, bro. We're Bangladeshi. Yeah. So if you don't have something you're doing, you're like a failure, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, you know,
if you have something you're doing, you still might be a failure.
Not to make a fish joke, but keep the fish on the reel. Don't gamble for a bigger one.
Exactly, man.
It's dinner time. We're eating this.
Exactly. So, I mean, I didn't have an offer letter from other internships. I had an email from CJ. So best believe I said yes to that, bro.
And was that a paid opportunity? Or?
It was. Okay. And he had to go through some...
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'll pay you in experience.
Yeah.
So.
He and I remember in that video that we have recorded, inshallah, we'll use it in a documentary one day.
Inshallah.
And I tell him like, yeah, man, of course, I would love to intern with you. I can do it for free because I was just passionate at that time, right? And he was the one to say, no, like nothing in this life is free. I'll figure out a way. So he actually had to get investor money to fund that internship and kind of jump through hoops for me. So it was both sided, and I really respect him for
Helped
that.
him grow. It helped you.
No, but
grow.
I think that's important, right? Because that also means like he sounds like an awesome guy, by the way.
Sir.
But it seems like he had enough foresight to know that it's not sustainable unless if there's like some aspect of like continuity.
Right.
Like, of course, like competition is important and experience is important, but like you have to create a model that's sustainable for you to not just do it for like a month and then you're like questioning yourself like after a month of experience, like, why am I doing this again?
Right.
It's like, yeah, the uptick is there, but then there also has to be like a sustainable model. So I think that's important to consider. But I mean, clearly I can tell that was like a massive and it's super pivotal moment in your life, right? So like, walk us through like what happened after that. Like you go through this like internship period.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you were doing, and then how did that translate into like your decision making of should I go to like corporate,
Right,
or should I like what should I do next? Talk about that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that question. It materialized everything. It the concept of entrepreneurship, owning your own business is there, but when you're in the trenches, when you're in the weeds, you see that it's very real. Real humans are doing it. That was that light bulb moment for me as a freshman going into sophomore year, right? So my internship with him looked very, very different than what any of my friends were doing that. And I'm very grateful for it. It was just a different perspective. He was taking client meetings in Whole Foods in his apartment, 1-bedroom apartment at that time. That's part of the come up story, right? So, I was mobbing around with him. I would meet him. I would take a Lime scooter through West Campus, meet him at his apartment, right? And start the day at his apartment. He would take a few client calls, and then you're like, all right, let's get in the car. And then our car rides are what I remember most because I was just, by nature, alhamdulillah, curious. So I would ask him questions, and the car rides between meeting from meeting are where I would like soak up everything that he's kind of pouring into me. And then, from his apartment, we'd go to the gym. Yeah, he's taking a client meeting while working out. And then we go to Whole Foods, meets another client, get some work done there. I'm recording, you know what I mean? So all this stuff, just very different, non-conventional, a freshman from business school coming in like, oh, snap.
Yeah.
Like this is what business looks like. You know what I mean? So it kind of materialized it for me, meeting agency owners, meeting company owners that are selling retreats or health coaches, fitness coaches, or selling products. So like, just getting a buffet almost of the different type of business models that are out there that we read in the textbook in school, but actually seeing it in practice. So
what was conversations like with your friends and peers that you went to school with, right? Because they're getting wined and dined on these really cool corporate budgets. I remember when I interned for IBM, I was like, oh, lamb ribs, heck yeah. I gained like 15 pounds in like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like we're like, oh, I had Cliff Bars again. like what did you feel some type of way in that moment when you hear like the difference of your experience versus theirs and the range?
Not really, bro. And really quickly on a quick tangent, the lamb chops, bro. I did go to Deloitte University's, like they were one of their pipeline, day with Deloitte tax or whatever. Yeah. And the lamb chops were halal. So incredible. Great lamb chops. So I did get the corporate lamb chops, all right? Yeah. So that's all my resume.
I didn't miss anything, right?
Entrepreneurship is not bad.
Yeah. Come on, man. The lamb chops are better.
But yeah, so got the lamb chops, but alhamdulillah, coming back to school after that summer, and in no way to speak or like boast my own ego, I credit everything to God. The perception of how people would interact with me, ask me about my own experience, it was clear and evident that I had a more eventful summer than they did. You know what I mean? Not everyone. I'm not generalizing here. Just the
but on
friends,
average,
my circle that I interacted with, right? Like that have interned at other corporate companies. So, and another thing I did during that internship was CJ told me at that time my trade was the camera, and he said, Even though he knew my long-term goal of not wanting myself to associate myself with a camera, I just didn't want to go down that route, but I was good at it. So he was like, bro, that is your way into the rooms, into shaking hands, and into getting into, areas where you need to be. So lean into it, bite your ego. And if you just vlog everything that we're doing every day, just 30-second reels, not reels at that time, but just like 30-second edits.
Yeah.
Your life will change. And that's exactly what had happened through the permission of Allah. Yeah. So, people saw what I was doing. I was very active on social media then. I learned about personal branding, marketing, so on and so to speak. So I learned personal branding and marketing before sales. And I credit that to CJ. And so coming back, it was evident that my summer was a bit more eventful, and people saw it, right? So naturally, my kind of frame on, Hamza knows business was a little bit higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that kind of opened doors for the events that, alhamdulillah, I was able to host, and which, amplified our growth and stuff like that. So alhamdulillah.
Hamza knows business. I like it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's incredible because I'm a firm believer that the best type of experience you can get is just to do it.
Right.
And you're with someone who's like literally running and gunning and going full speed, right?
It's getting it done.
Right. And I mean, there's a lot of like knowledge of wisdoms and nuggets that I could pull from like what you just said, which is like whatever gets you into the room and then you can shift and figure out what position. But not only that, you're also like constantly upskilling, right? Like to be a videographer and photographer is like one aspect, and all the things that it relates to. It's a very difficult job, which by the way, I've realized just through this podcast is a lot more intensive than I ever thought before. It deserves more respect, I should say. But then you're also like learning all these other components because you're interacting with different businesses. Networking is a different skill set. Understanding how the marketing cycles, how to build a brand.
100%.
And so like, were those like things that were like naturally occurring just through the conversations, or were you actively like watching YouTube videos, talking to people? Like, how did you actually skill? Like, how was your approach to that skill up process?
Yeah. So technically after that internship, CJ, I continued that relationship. It was more of kind of like an unspoken, like, under his wing. And that transpired into him allowing me to use his platform of Thrive on Life, which is a kind of lifestyle consulting. The message of the brand was Thrive on Life, don't just survive, right? Like just make best of everything. So he was running the consulting arm, and since my kind of specialty or zone of genius at that time was camera, it was like, run with Thrive on Media as a brand, and that's yours. Do whatever you want. I give you permission, right? So that was kind of like my real life playing ground of learning how to hire people, learning how to engage in sales conversations, learning how to hire and fire people.
That level of trust is crazy for someone to give, because he's using the same brand name as his, right? Like,
that just means that he did a great job.
Yeah, but
but if you find someone that's a diamond in the rough, you do that. You give them more scope, and you give them the permission. Which is what it is to fail. And I'm sure, which I would love to talk about, is like, what was the thing that you did that messed up really bad, and you had to have a conversation, and he coached you up? Because I can tell this guy's already a great mentor. Because like that is like that's like when it's hard to find good talent, but when you find someone, you have to continuously give them more and more and more and more.
Right.
So yeah, I'd love to hear if there was like a time in that spread where it was like you pushed a little too hard, or you made a decision that definitely wasn't right. You fired the wrong person, you hired the wrong person, and you had to like really have that kind of discussion.
Alhamdulillah, there wasn't anything drastic, but two events do come to mind. One time, obviously, using his platform, using his network means like people that he's close to. So there was one time that there was an interested party in a potential video shoot from his close network, and I knew him as well, and we all knew each other. And so me trying to close the deal, I was like, what's your budget? And he's like, 1,000. And he was like, so what's the cost of the project? I was like, 1,000. So
it's like, you're like $999.
Right? I mean, in my growth phase, so to speak, I just didn't really know how to drop the price or kind of work that closing piece, right? Yeah. Man, I'll close you any day now.
But
at that time I was like, I need money, right? Yeah. And because at that time we had 2 videographers that we had to feed as well as so that happened. That person, so to speak, that business owner didn't say anything on the phone with me then. He was, he's a mature business owner as well. But he did have a conversation with CJ. It was nothing crazy. CJ didn't lash out or anything, but he did, text sent a voice note. We jumped on a call, and then when I met up with him next, he kind of coached me through it. Like, hey, when you're working with just the different nuances that you don't learn in a course or textbook. Like, business is a art of relationships, of being human, right? Understanding and kind of like going to the core of like understand what they're looking for, what the pain point is, what the main solution that they're looking for is, so on and so forth, where to bring up price, where to bring up budget, so to speak. So he just kind of coached me through it, but it was a conversation that we've had, and it was a little bit like I remember it because I felt bad a little bit. And not a little bit, I felt bad because, I see him as my brother. I don't want there to be any detriment to his brand. But, alhamdulillah, nothing fell through. And it was a coaching moment.
Do you feel like these opportunities where like a mentor is giving you that playground space to grow and learn, right? Do you feel like those opportunities lack within our own communities, or do you feel like you couldn't find those opportunities readily available? Do you think there's like a lack of trust that sometimes happens within our own spaces?
100%, man. I would love to talk about interaction of Muslim business owners within our own community, but to answer that question, I couldn't find any. I mean, are there Muslim entrepreneurs? 100%, hence Caravan Podcast. But at that moment in time, I couldn't find anyone that I could look up to that had both deen and execution of the business, right? It was either like fully dunya or, deen, and you're lacking the means and the engineering tact, right? And may Allah grant everyone hidayah. So at that moment in time, it was more so kind of grasping on to whatever the next step Allah was putting in front of me. And at that moment in time, like you had asked earlier, I didn't. The concept of tawakkul, trusting Allah's qadar, wasn't really materialized. It was just kind of me following the flow because I had to, and I didn't have. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, hopefully that answers your question there. Yeah.
So going from Thrive as an intern to then, leading Thrive Media.
Yeah.
What was kind of like the next things that you're looking at for the next step? Because at this point, were you a sophomore or a junior in college?
Thrive Media really materialized a lot of like mini projects here and there between sophomore year, but the summer before junior year or senior year, I don't quite remember, but it was during COVID. I remember everyone was masking up and whatnot, but we were in person. At that moment in time, we had gotten 2 more interns. So it was, kind of a playing ground for CJ assigning tasks to them and projects, and also me kind of managing the interns and having a creative team, so on and so forth. So, like what was that other part of the question? My bad.
Like, what was like the next step now? Like, were you gonna
next
do
step?
This? Yeah.
At that time, it was like my main thing is I need to grow Thrive Media so that I don't have to go down the route of corporate job. You know what I mean? It was survival. It was survival, right?
Yeah.
So, and in the process of trying to grow Thrive Media is when the kind of inception of CATA Leads happens. But that summer, that COVID summer, was very important and essential, because we had done a lot of real estate projects and seen a little bit of traction there. And just me going down that rabbit hole that summer before senior year when everything opened up was, I think, the pivotal moment.
So you are, you have a relationship with someone who kind of took you in and nurtured you with mentorship and growth and opportunity. And you have this idea for CATA Leads, right? Was that a tough conversation to be like, because, for him, it's like, oh, this is a great teammate that I have now, it's like seeing your kid. I don't have a kid, but I would imagine like seeing your kid go to college, right? Like, how was he feeling? And how did you feel like, I got to tell CJ that I got this idea that might
Great question, man. I actually want to ask him that question because I never asked him. I never had like a formal conversation.
Yeah.
Because, and I credit this to him, and may Allah like reward him for this and grant him hidayah, but he never made it feel like, oh, you're stuck with me, I'm doing you a favor. He, from the get-go, his framing was, dude, stick with me, use my platform, mob around with me, so that you can hit the ground running when you're ready.
This
you know
is
what
transition.
I mean? Everything that he asked me to do or I had offered to do from myself was because he wanted to empower me with the gear and the arsenal because he knew from day one that I wanted to run my own business, or kind of it evolved from wanting to go down to a management consulting company to, by that time, I want to run my own business and grow my own business. So he always took that framing. He never made me feel. So to answer your question, Naveed, like I wasn't afraid. It wasn't nerve wracking.
Yeah.
It was more so. I was more so excited. I was like, hey, brother, like I'm doing this now. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I need to meet CJ, bro.
CJ's great, man.
No, because that's a sign of a good leader.
Yeah.
And it's like and honestly, a great friend and mentor. Like the
Right.
difference between someone who's a great mentor and someone who's like your boss.
Right.
Sometimes they conflict. I was blessed and fortunate that my first job was I've had a lot of jobs. Like my first corporate job was at Ericsson, where I started as an intern.
Yeah.
And I got 3 promotions within the span of like a year and a half because my manager was my mentor.
Wow.
And there were many, like I remember when I left there, I had a pretty similar uncomfortable conversation where I was like, hey, like I think it's time for me to move on from Ericsson and I'm going to go pursue this software development agency thing and on my own. And I know that the structure of the culture was like he was going to suffer. Not once did he say anything. He's just like, yeah, your wings are ready to fly. If that's the way you feel is like the best direction, I'm fully supported. Let me know if there's anything that I can do afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned so much from that experience of like how what it means to be a good mentor and what it means to be like a good leader, because you have to be able to separate like your own individual goal and aspirations and not limit someone else's potential.
Right.
Everything's written for you, right?
Yes.
So it's like it's awesome when I hear stories like that, because you wouldn't have been able to do the things that you do if like you didn't have that access. Like I wouldn't have been able to. So it's amazing. Has that shifted? Because I don't know if you like mentor people now, but has that shifted into like is that something you do actively for others that you're trying to pick?
Man, talking.
If not, you
this,
need to do it, bro.
100%.
Yeah,
And
you need to do it.
anyone watching this, please hit my DMs. I want to give back to this ummah for fi sabilillah. So, but talking through it has just made me realize, like, alhamdulillah, Allah did put me in a position like that. But with my own company, I do have a very what people would call a key hire that has large aspirations. And he wants to own his own business at one point. And so, and he asked several times for a raise and whatnot. And those kind of, and I say naive, not in a negative connotation, but those naive things in the sense of, in the pursuit of ambition, right? So I had to kind of step into that mentor role. I was like, brother, look, with the, and he's Muslim too, he's in Egypt. With the permission of Allah, Cataly is where it's at right now. And with the permission of Allah, if you stick with me, because he's a key hire. So I am having to exercise my muscles of having to frame this properly because I need him. But also at the same time, I know that Allah is watching and nothing is permanent. I need to enable him. And this is another topic of like, trusting Allah's plan. If Allah wants him to go, Allah will take him. It's not within my control. So I told him, with Allah's permission, you will experience an exit of a company. And you have, and exactly using the same lingo that CJ used with me, he's a manager on the floor. You have full realm of exercising all the things that I am teaching you and coaching you on with the permission of Allah. All the courses that I paid upwards of $50,000 for, I gave him login access to. Like, you have a playground to exercise your sales skills, your management skills, and just go through all the mess ups, right? And I know that. So would you rather go through here or on your own dime, right? And so it's also myself or anyone in a similar position looking out for them, because I know if he were to quit right now, he would suffer, right?
Sincerely, this is the best for you.
This is literally, like, I'm saying this as a Muslim brother and also as a CEO, like, this is the best route for you. Like, stick in, you have the playground, you have all the knowledge and the resources, you have access to me, right? So stick in and go through with this. So to answer your question, Hamza, like, yeah, I've had to, practice that muscle of framing and also mentoring and coaching and looking out for him, but also at the same time, trusting Allah's plan that, because he is a key hire at any time and moment, if Allah is to take his direction in another route, so be it.
It's an art, man. It's an art to, that's one of the hardest things to do is to get a group of people together and then making it worth their, not like short term, but their long-term vision aligned to like the thing that you're also trying to build. Right. And making sure that, again, like we talked about the sustainability component, right? That's the hardest part of like, okay, you can find decent people, you can find good people, but then are they going to be with you for 3 months? Okay, I'm going to spend so much time, resource, effort, and energy. Right. And then, and then I have to go retrain someone. So it's like, how can you like find a model that can it kind of forces you also to like continuously level up as well, right?
100%.
Same thing with this podcast. Like we have a team, right? And if I feel that we have a responsibility to all the sacrifices and commitment that every single person has made, so that we have to challenge ourselves of how we can 10x, 100x, whatever we're trying to do, so that we can make it
plus one, that 100x right now is 0.
but like the framing of building a team, is like, man, like, and it takes I say it's an art because you have to convince people,
right,
internally and yourself,
right.
You have to get people buying into your delusional ideas, right?
Dude, it's always delusional until you make it happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, trust me, bro. Look at the board. It's right here. It's right here.
It takes a little bit longer than you think.
It's gonna happen. Yeah. It's gonna happen.
But I think that is a great point, right? Like the idea is that, especially for your Muslim brothers and sisters, like you want, what's the hadith? It was like you want the best for your brother as you do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You want
for your brother what you want for yourself.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we lose track of. It's like, okay, how can I get them to, as close to me, but maybe I'll be one step above. There's this like complex sometimes still exists within our mind, and how can you position yourself to counteract that at times, right? So, but I think in this level of like leadership that you're in, and finding out what the future lies ahead, right, without revealing everything, that takes a big sense of like trust that you get from people that are working with you or that know you. What do you think? Because I mean, you're a young guy, right? And this is your, first company that's gone up to this size. Alhamdulillah, and may Allah increase you. But how did you earn trust from folks, right? Like, yes, you're paying them, but like, there's another level that's here that I think people are really curious on finding that transition.
Step 1, grow a beard.
Yeah, that's right. Abe Lincoln did it right.
Isn't that like a thing internationally where if you have a beard, you're like less trustworthy or something?
I believe it's more trustworthy.
On the kuffar standards.
I think so. I trust people with beards. It's like
100%.
I can't remember. I think it was one of our podcast guests actually that was saying something along this, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I don't trust people without a beard. No offense.
That's so funny.
On the Western standards.
because sometimes like the Molvies are like making up stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Okay.
Anyway, the question was,
No, 100%, man. No, great question. I think, firstly, you have to let your actions speak for yourself. You have to lead from the front. And also, and this is a tactic. I'm sure there's psychology behind it. And also, I think there's an Islamic element to it where, don't reveal more than necessary. There's barakah in the hidden a little bit, like in the maknoon, I think, right? So
that's true even with like good deeds, right?
Right, 100%. So like just veiling, as-sattar is the name of Allah, like the one who veils. So don't if to anyone watching that is younger, that Allah has blessed with hikmah and granted you position, don't reveal your age unless you absolutely have to, because people are people, insan are insan. People will use it against you. So don't disclose your age unless you absolutely have to. And secondly, acknowledge the fact that you will have to work twice as hard to let through the permission of Allah, your work speak for you. And also the way and the demeanor that you carry yourself, right? If you allow that to, the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy, if you yourself believe that, oh, I am younger and age, if you measure 100%, there's merit to experience defined in tenure, how long you've been doing something, but also you can condense now with everything that we have access to AI, YouTube, and just access to resource. You can condense experience in a shorter time frame now and you can measure experience in the metric of events, how much you have done, right? So technically you can have more experience within 1 to 2 years compared to someone who's been doing something for 10 years, right? So condensed experience and measured in events, not tenure. So if you're able to do that and prove that and carry yourself with a demeanor where you know what you're doing, don't fake it, because people will smell that, right? And I think transparency, brother, I think when it comes to sales is not my zone of genius. I'm an entrepreneur. I have to be good at everything. With the permission of Allah, sales, whether it comes to sales, client success, operations, leading a team, managing a team, hiring someone, I think something that I've always heard from people, and I give credit to Allah again, is how transparent they found me and how convicted they found me in when I spoke, right? And psychologically, in a very tangible way, conviction derives from and confidence derives from when you know what you're talking about and when you have done the thing, right? So, don't fake it till you make it, like fake it till you become it. You know what I mean? So just do it and speak on what you know. And if there's a certain like weakness or an area of improvement, be transparent about it. I think transparency breeds strength. Right? And if done properly. Transparency, people also confuse like, oh, I'm going to be an open book. Let me tell you about my childhood and all my weaknesses and all my vices. And you're going to think I'm an open. No, that's not tact. You're being, heedless when you do that. Right? So there's tact when it comes to being transparent and what to unveil. And, your demeanor takes it. And of course, Allah's permission.
Why do you think people are sometimes... Like, obviously there's a level of transparency, like you pointed out, right? There's things you keep veiled. There's things that you should probably let people know as a disclaimer, right? What do you think usually stops people from, I can tell you how to build a house, and you go really in detailed on, like, let's say carpentry, right? You don't know a hoot on tiling. Right. But you don't say it. But it's okay to say that I don't know tiling. Okay, we probably need a tiling guy too, right? Yeah. Like, what do you think stops people from not revealing that element of that gap? Do you think it's embarrassment? Do you think it's something else? Or
placing your need for validation? And as humans, everyone needs validation, and Allah has wired everyone to do that. And we need validation from our family, from our wives, but primarily, I think that stems from placing your need for validation from other people, instead of Allah, right? So when you place your need and anchor your need for validation from Allah, you don't really care what other people think of you, because you don't have to, all those Western capitalistic gurus that teach you power frames, authoritative frames. This is what you do this is how you shape. Don't get me wrong. Tactics are amazing. These are means, right? But ultimately, learn the means, but also know that if Allah wills for you to hold that position, if Allah wills for you to hold that power, influence, and capital, you will hold it, right? So to answer your question, brother, it's like anchoring your need for validation in the wrong place, because one place gives you, because as a Muslim, definition of Islam is what? Submission, right? You are submitting and letting go of one thing or the other in both instances. But when you do it with Allah, when you do it with people, there is fear of not being accepted. When you do it with Allah and you let go, you are letting it go to Ar-Razzaq, right? So you don't, you almost get more power by admitting that you are weak.
That's incredible. I mean, you are not intentionally, but you're almost in some capacity placing your goal of pleasing a creation of Allah versus trying to 100%. Please Allah, right? And sometimes we do this unknowingly. Yeah. And it's a very dangerous place. I mean, this lesson, you put it very well. When did you learn that, right? Like, is it an experience that you were like falling into that trap, and then you kind of had to catch yourself, like, why am I going through this? Why am I doing this, right? Because sometimes people will say a white lie and then move on, but those things are layers of, a bad habit that can cascade to something larger. Right. Did you catch yourself at any moment in your journey and understanding this lesson, or is that something that was kind of embedded in you early on and you've been able to refine?
No, 100% evolved to that position, man. I mean, I think everyone would lie if they were to say that they haven't gone through that.
Came out the womb like this. We're going to
say, I'm a G from the get-go. Yeah. No, but
I was about to say, actually, CJ. No,
that's funny, man. No, 100% went through it. Yeah. And I think it's the, I don't think, unless you're an entrepreneur, anyone watching this, they wouldn't understand or fathom. And by no means am I trying to drag more empathy, because we don't need it. All comes from Allah. There's a level and intensity of ambiguity and fear of the unknown that you have to train as an entrepreneur. And I think there's nothing that tests your tawakkul more than entrepreneurship in today's world, right? And one facet, obviously, right? And obviously there's caveats and whatnot, but it's a very big vehicle that tests your tawakkul. So just going through the different walks and the different instances where oh, should I shake my hand this way, or should I say this, or should I say that, or just like worrying and stressing yourself and inducing self-induced anxiety, and also shaitan-induced anxiety, because shaitan doesn't only tell you to sin, he weaponizes these small nuances to get you into a spiral of anxiety, which leads you to sin, right? So inducing stress and anxiety to a point where you kind of you're just overwhelmed, you're burnt out, right? So when you reach that stage, you're like, and then you self-diagnose, you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I worrying about all this? If the deal is in the hands of Allah, it will close no matter whether I shaked my hand a certain way or I set a closing line a certain way. Don't get me wrong, it's upon me to tie my camel and do it and execute with ihsan, but also at the same time, do it, tie your camel extremely tight, but then let it go in the hands of Allah. So I think to answer your question, brother, it's like it stems from you have to go through a valley of like being overwhelmed and like self-induced anxiety and stress.
Well, I was gonna say, sorry, this is like such an important topic. I still struggle with this, by the way, which is like
me too, bro.
Because like the difference as an entrepreneur, you're naturally most entrepreneurs naturally are thinking about what are all the variables and which ones can I tweak and where do I. It's like a constant like hedging game, in terms of where I'm putting more resources, time, effort, all that, right? And so the concept of tying your camel is like there's a lot you can do to tie your camel.
What does it mean to
tie
your
There's
camel?
a lot you can do to tie your camel.
Exactly.
And
There's
so it's always like,
knots too.
well, do I tie it like this? Yeah, exactly. No, and then like how tight do I need it to be? But I agree with for sure, like whatever's done is done, and then you just move on and you leave it in the faith. Like you leave the result to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you do your part. But I also feel that a lot of times people aren't challenging themselves enough of what they could do.
100%.
And I always get like stuck between that middle line in between.
Yeah.
Like, did you try to tie the knot in a different way? Did you try to do it a little bit tighter? Or did you try instead of the pole to do it next to the, like, and that's, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's such like a pivotal thought that is always constantly on me, because I'm naturally like, okay, this could be better. This could be tweaked, but it's like only to improve, not to like be like, oh, I wish the result was different.
Right. Now I feel that I resonate with that deeply, man. I think your one of Cataly's at least was like hustle, and Allah like solving and making pivotal changes, but me not realizing that it was like fully solidifying. Of course, on surface level, yeah, Allah did this, but not me internalizing that. And then year 2 was like insane growth, but then year 3, it just, I think everyone goes through a journey where you hustle and then you accredit a lot of the success subconsciously to your hard work. So, and then in the middle part, you when things hit the fan, you're like, oh, more hard work and more knowledge and more resources is going to solve it, when in reality Allah was the source of that, of those solutions, not your hard work, right? So, and then you have to go through a valley of differentiating hard work and tying your camel, and what is your I think that definition is variant depending on your walk of life. And then solidifying your tawakkul. I think that's like what I'm going through, and may Allah help me on this path and everyone on this path. I think 2025 for me was that, because let's just say 2024, CATA Leads experienced insane growth. Alhamdulillah. But at that moment in time, I was wearing multiple hats. So maybe subconsciously I credited, growth was like, oh, maybe sales, I think the funnel was like amazing. And then 2025, alhamdulillah, another thing is staying in business is winning, and alhamdulillah, business is good. We're not, we're good. We're on track to exit, inshallah. But it wasn't more than 2024. So with more capital, bigger team, better team, more systems, more SOPs, better engine, we did less than 2024. So, when I was reflecting at the end of the year, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, should I invest in this course? Should I invest with this consultant? And then I was like, wait, hold on. So you're telling me in 2025, with more money, with more people, with more knowledge, in this dunya sense, I couldn't outdo what happened in 2024? Allah was the element in all of this. Yeah. And when I think about the pivotal moments in business where I legit didn't know the next step or what to do next, or the business was going to go down, it was like a random email or a random DM, a random connection that would take me out of it. So all that to say, brother, is like at this moment in time, I'm like, I have this goal. I'm just going to work on whatever, my intuition or my gut calls me towards. I think that's ilham from Allah. I think if you are on the path, Allah will guide you no matter what. So, and then just focusing that extra time, that freedom of time, the freedom of geography, all those facets of entrepreneurship that we got in the game in the first place, exercising that to build your akhirah, right? So that extra time that Hormozi would say, lock yourself in, record more content, take that extra time, go to the masjid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And dive into the books, learn hadith and stuff like that.
SubhanAllah, I mean, I think this is the thing, like we cannot look at things in a binary, right? Like there has to be a level of like dialectical thought on what is that you're experiencing. So when we look at things as clearly objective elements of, okay, button A, B, C, D, E, all these factors, right, are all higher. Why am I not doing as well as before?
Yeah.
And ultimately, it does come from Allah. But like sometimes we only look at the binary being good as bad, like more money, good, right?
Yeah.
Less money, bad. But it's
Yeah.
like maybe you were just protected. Maybe Allah was like, if you got that deal, you would have been on a flight, would have ended up badly. If you're on this road, you would have done this like sinful thing, and that would have ended badly, right?
True.
Or even what you are doing, maybe on the other person, it could be a bad thing. On their the calculation of things that are happening is beyond your. Like there's no AI system that can comprehend or calculate
100%.
all those things that goes into this situation, right? So I think ultimately it's like you doing all those things was not negative. You learned a whole bunch doing those things, right? And to your point, now you have this extra bandwidth time, deepen your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like you got here because of Allah.
Right.
Right. And this is something I thought about like when I was unemployed for like 8 or 9 months, my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was like this. Right. And then recently I was like, it is not like this anymore. The things that I prayed for so deeply was in that moment, and Allah has given me that blessing, and I'm now neglecting that relationship that granted me the success.
Yeah.
Just like that, I was like, all right, time to pray for an extra 2 rakats, right? So, but it is something that we have to quiz ourselves on because you will be tempted by multiple factors. Sometimes even our nafs alone, not even shaitan himself. It's like, you're like, oh, I'm so busy. I got to do this. I don't have time to do that. It's like, it doesn't matter. You have time to that. You do have time for. This will, yes, do your part, but still your form of like having that relationship with Allah will even get you further.
100%.
So I want to make a little bit of a harder shift into CATA Leads because it's been awesome, witnessing you both in person and then mostly behind the screen of the growth that you guys done and how you guys are building this company. And you've mentioned that, an exit is something you are aspiring for this next chapter. What got you into this business though, right? Like this is in generating leads for real estate agents and things like that. Like how did you get into that sphere?
Right. So I think I'll tie it back with one of the themes that we lightly mentioned earlier on in this podcast is I think one of the biggest lessons of entrepreneurship is understanding the concept of you have to follow the path of least resistance and also go after the lowest hanging fruit and learn to diagnose your zone of genius, what you're good at, and that will be your first business. Not necessarily you have to come up with something revolutionary or change the game or something pivotal, right? So in that sense, Thrive on Media was right before CATA Leads, and in the pursuit, like I was mentioning, summer before senior year, everyone's locking up their, as you guys know, like the internship that you get in your junior year is the one that sets you up after you graduate, right? So I had nothing at that moment. So it was like, I got to grow Thrive on Media or, I'm going to be out of a job or business, right? So in the pursuit of that, I was looking for consultants, jumped on a lot of discovery calls. And one of these guys on the sales call was like, at that moment in time, we're only doing video at that. And he was like, why not lead gen? Why not go after their, bottom line? So that sparked a whole kind of like rabbit hole. And I went down that rabbit hole. At that moment in time, I had a network of real estate agents. I could speak their lingo. I understood the game. I understood like the industry. So am I waking up every day pumping the air like, hey, I generate real estate leads, but very grateful for it, alhamdulillah. But I followed the path of least resistance and the lowest hanging fruit, which was network of real estate agents, know-how of that industry, and then the skills and the knowledge I've had of marketing and sales as of that moment, and just created an agency from there.
Were there specific tactics or approaches that you used to reach out to those real estate folks? Or, I mean, I'm assuming some you already had in your network, but did you like have groups that you would work with and say, hey, here's what I've done for like one or two people? Like what was like that catalyst and like point of where you leveraged the community that you had with kind of this vision of going into real estate lead gen?
Yeah, 100%. I think my first client came from the network. I think first two clients, actually. I did, so how I went to market, so to speak, I leveraged the strategy of doing free trials for people within my network in exchange for a testimonial. And then those testimonials would then become marketing assets to then do cold outreach and prospecting. So, and then when I was getting the testimonial, I had sold one of those trial clients into a paying client. Very grateful for that initial pilot client. But I'm a very big believer for any business, your friends and family, even if you're making a PE or a tech SaaS, like a very intricate company, your first client or customer will come from your friends and family, even if they're not your target audience, someone they know, right? So I'm a big believer in that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's only 4 ways that you can get a client: friends and family, referrals, or inbound, right? Like paid ads or whatnot, outbound, and organic content, right? Like one to many, one to one, one to many, or one to like, in a group setting. So when you're starting a company, when you know that those 4 ways are the only way that you can get clients, like the game of marketing is very simplified, right? So at that moment in time, brother, to answer your question, first client came from friends and family through that trial strategy. And then from there, I cold DM'd on Facebook to get the second client. And then the third, fourth, fifth, and then all the following ones came from a mixture of LinkedIn, Facebook, and then I finally landed on cold email. Cold email was the one that clicked for us, alhamdulillah, and it almost worked like an inbound engine. At that moment, before the big Google software change, I had a script where I would link all the testimonials, and I had more clients up to that point by that time. And they would book in a call like ready to buy from a cold email, which is like mind blowing to me.
Yeah, that's a really high qualified.
Yeah.
What was the percentage of that qualified lead?
I forget the metrics, but I forget the metrics, but I can also break down like funnel metrics, what to look out for on cold email and whatnot. But cold email was a rise to fame, so to speak. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah. And then when Gmail switched up like their policy, like privacy policy and all that, it took a little bit of a dip. Cold email still works, by the way. You just got to do things a little bit differently. My script at that time wasn't working because having all those links within the first email would get you spammed.
Oh yeah.
So then by that time, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we were doing enough MRR to then start up paid ads. So then, we launched paid ads and we haven't looked back since. So now our primary mode of acquisition is paid ads.
Well, I don't know much about like cold email or paid ads. But in the beginning, you mentioned like cold email worked extremely well.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of looking at specifically the real estate buyer audience, right? Why did cold email specifically work better than all the other forms of content or the other forms of potential channels?
Because so when it comes to the concept of cold prospecting, to really quickly touch on that for anyone listening, cold prospecting is one of the 4 channels or strategies or buckets that I've mentioned. In cold prospecting, there's different mediums you can do it. Like, for example, our agency, we do cold prospecting as fulfillment, but we do it through the medium of cold calling and texting on behalf of our agents, right? So to real estate, to answer your question, why it worked well for us getting clients, you think about the medium for cold prospecting where real estate agents spend most of their time, email, right? I mean, there's everyone spends time in email, but real estate agents out of many do that because they're checking contracts being sent, contracts being signed, sending updates and all that stuff. They're always in their email. So it's a mixture. And also, alhamdulillah, I picked a niche where finding your ICP is very easy. You can just Google real estate agents in Dallas and because the whole concept of being a real estate agent is you're a solo contractor, you're a solopreneur, and you have to be public. So your phone number and email are out there and it has to be accurate or otherwise people wouldn't find you. So alhamdulillah, when it came to building prospecting lists and lead lists and all that stuff, real estate agents are still a saturated market that are being sold to. So it was very easy to find their information. And then from there just came the process of like testing scripts, testing subject lines. The biggest subject line that worked for us, I can just say it now because, who cares? Risk comes from Allah. It was saw you on Zillow, Navid, or saw you on Zillow, Hamza. And
Oh, wow.
the S was uncapitalized. That's one thing I
But
tested.
this is to sell to the real estate agent.
This
right?
is to sell to the real estate agents.
I understand that
Yeah.
that's an easier sell, but
Right.
the big thing that you're really also talking about is you're saying, hey, I have super qualified leads that I can
Right.
send you to
Right.
the real estate agent.
Yeah.
So what would be the question for me is like, how did you get the buyers? Or was it just the fact that, alhamdulillah, like a lot of people have been buying homes in this time period and just a natural inflection of there's just so much abundance of people that were buying homes, right?
Right. So our offer is we get triple verified listing opportunities for real estate agents. These are phone appointments that have gone through essentially a triple layer quality check, right? So we're only prospecting to homeowners who want to potentially sell their house. So an agent can work with buyers or sellers, right? Buyers, and when it comes to as an agent, which type of client you would want. Of course, any client that pays you money and you can help actually. But out of those two, the seller is a little bit more anchored down, meaning when you put a house on the market, there's a contract signed and like there's an tangible asset in the question of that business deal. When you're a buyer, you're like,
potential.
oh, I want you to represent me. Okay, fine, sign the contract, whatever. But still, it's very wishy-washy. Like, oh, you can change your mind at any time.
The percentage of execution is
exactly.
full
You're doing
cycle.
showings, you're driving hours every weekend, all for it to not pan out and the buyer to change their mind. So all that to say is listings are kind of like creme de la creme of the type of client that you would want as a real estate agent, and hence that's the type of prospect we deliver to them.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you made it sounds like you made a deliberate choice
Yes.
to zone in on that.
Yeah.
Walk us through the decision making process on that.
Exactly what I said, because the quality of a buyer is not to say that there's not qualified buyers. There 100% there are.
Disproportionately.
Exactly.
Just low hanging fruit.
Exactly. Think about go to the mechanics of lead prospecting and lead generation, right? And if you want to prospect, you need a lead list, right? There are mechanics where you can build a lead list of buyers, but that is more so through interest generation, meaning you have to run ads to get people to opt in that they want to buy, right? So then you have your lead list. But for prospecting homeowners, by the grace of Allah, man, that information is very public, right? Whether you like it or not, your information is out there. Federal agencies, credit bureaus, and data resellers, everyone has your information. So in order for us to build a prospecting list to begin with, it's much easier to find people that own a home, right? So I can just plug in zip codes in our database and get thousands and thousands of people that own a home, and then just start, prospecting to them. Obviously, in a legal fashion.
Right.
Well, what's like your pricing? Like, did a real estate agent pay $100 a month, 10,000? Like, what's the rate?
Right. So it's $3,500 per month to begin with, and we frame ourselves as a pay-per appointment company at this moment in time but framed in a way where in a little bit like a SaaS or a tech company where we sell in batches of 10. So we have a minimum usage. So essentially, you're paying upfront for 10 triple verified appointments, $3,500, but we don't bill on a retainer model, whatnot. One of our differentiators and competitive advantages, a lot of Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, they sell these lead packages, these incumbents to real estate agents, and they lock them in, long-term contracts, no matter regardless.
Almost.
Yeah, predatory contracts. One of the biggest reasons why clients work with us is we don't lock them into any contract. So everyone,
You're just buying the qualified leads.
they're buying the qualified leads in batches of 10, right? And we don't let's say we try to keep our monthly billing cycle on a traditional 30-day cycle, but let's say for any reason, and there has been some instances where I'm 2 appointments behind on your monthly target, right? We won't bill you until we hit that target, right? So it's that stems from integrity, but also just doing business in a good way. We don't want to bill you for the next month or the next batch until we complete your first batch
You want
of
to
10.
get value, yeah.
What was the thought process around batching them versus doing one lead at a time? Is it just because logistically it gives you enough volume?
I have buddies in the space that run paper, surface level paper lead agencies where it's just you transact on a lead basis. and it just attracts a very low quality type of client, and their amount of dispute rate and Stripe and whatnot is just through the roof. Root cause of that, to simply answer your question, is the quality of client. So the leads could be banger, but you're just attracting a client that would much rather, you're having to go through a sales process to sell them on a $75 lead versus an agent that can afford a batch of 10 and pay $35.
That makes sense. From like a health perspective, it's like somebody who buys a workout class for a day versus who buys like a 10 pack, right? You've already financially committed and you want to make it worthwhile.
Right.
So I guess when it comes to being in this industry, right? Like it's home ownership, and being Muslim is a very turbulent and promiscuous topic around like riba and loans and things like that, right? How do you navigate working, even though you're not like working in it, right? But working so adjacent to it? How do you ever think about that? Do you ever find like ways to like make it less that centric? Like, I'm kind of curious how you navigate that space.
Great question, man. So firstly, 100% I've thought about that, because I mean, to anyone watching and also us at this table, we know that, engaging in usury and interest is declaring war on Allah, and may Allah protect us from that. So, there was times where I was presented with opportunities to, take on a MLO as a client, or mortgage loan officer, or a loan brokerage as a client. And it was at those pivotal times where I had to make that active decision. And for me, it was a very easy one, alhamdulillah, because that would be, I'm directly enabling someone, like a first degree action of someone getting a loan,
you're
right?
Fully in it. Yeah.
With the cards that we've been dealt through the grace of Allah, us being in America, us running a company, we don't, and also when it comes to like sins and whatnot, we are not accountable for like the secondary and the tertiary layers of consequence, right? If I sell a knife to my brother Hamza, what he does with that knife, whether engages in butchery or, God forbid, a crime, that's his accountability, right? So we are actually a few layers removed from that. I could, and if you think about it, someone selling their house, the layer where loan would even be introduced is actually on the other party buying the house, which is like 5 or 6 degrees separate. You know what I mean? I'm connecting the agent with the homeowner who wants to sell the house, and there's no loan involved when selling the house. That's just a transaction. The loan is involved in the buyer and that agent and the ML, like the, their beliefs on using loans and mortgages. So I'm actually like very much removed, alhamdulillah. And that's something that I've prayed for, because, earning halal income is, and may Allah keep everything that we do in a halal way. So, yeah.
So now that you're looking into like exiting, right? Like who would be...
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Before we go to exit, sorry. You can ask that in a second. But like this is basically a service-based business. Yes, you're doing ads, but man,
we're running ads for ourselves. We don't run ads for any of our clients.
Good clarification. Yeah. But basically, you're still a service-based organization,
right?
And one of the hardest things about service-based organizations is scaling,
right?
And finding good people, good talent, processes, and then doing it in a sustainable way. What has been the hardest part of that to get you to prep yourself for a potential sale?
Knowing what to work on. Because like you were referring to when we were talking about tying the camel, when you get to, alhamdulillah, through the permission of Allah, once you cross a certain stage in business, it becomes less about like driving brute force through the growth of more clients, more sales and whatnot. And then it becomes to fine tuning certain variables to increase maybe more output using the same fulfillment team that you have. So enabling more revenue without introducing more variable cost. So to answer your question, brother, I think the hardest thing is, as a CEO, not really like a mechanical certain thing, because getting the thing done or solved with the permission of Allah is easy. Or if you just, and I say easy meaning that it's easy to diagnose and, to execute is easy, but to identify what to work on and when and in the order of the sequence is the biggest challenging thing, and something that you need to practice your muscle. And I've gone through the stages of maybe perhaps working on the wrong thing and that kind of like showing up on the other side. For example, in 2024, we've, hit astronomically high MRR numbers, alhamdulillah, through the permission of Allah. But I thought, hey, we're chilling. Like, we can take this. But the 1 quarter of very good sales increased the MRR top line, but I wasn't really, or it wasn't not a direct fault. It was, I was wearing too many hats. So fulfillment suffered. It was a lagging indicator. So fulfillment didn't suffer immediately. It suffered in Q3, Q4 when it caught up to us, and then the churn followed, and then the reduction in revenue followed. So it's like if you don't work on the right thing now, you will see the effects of it later down the road.
Delayed effect.
Yeah.
Oh, so you don't. Yeah, so you're like kind of behind the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's like steering a
So,
cruise ship.
and I think we can lay out like philosophies and concepts here all day long, but I think it's very curated to the type of service business that even you are running, and it's attached to your unit economics, cost to fulfill, all these kind of things, so on and so forth.
What drove this, I guess, decision on like wanting to exit now? And like, I guess if you had to dream up like your ideal person who acquires CATA Leads, what would that, or who would that be?
Yeah, I'll just answer the second part, which is very fast. It's my ICP for a buyer is anyone that wants to buy my company and wants good cash flow.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, I think it would be maybe PEs that are doing roll-ups for marketing agencies in the lead gen agencies. Within marketing agencies, there's web agencies, there's SEO agencies, there's ad agencies, there's outbound lead gen agencies. So there's agencies for every kind of different niches. And marketing agencies are a very low barrier to entry, high cash. And if you structure it right, like 40 to 50, maybe even sometimes up to 65% operating profit. So it's a very good cash flow business. So the ICP who I'm hypothesizing, ultimately it's Allah's plan, that will buy my company is more likely probably a roll-up portfolio that a PE is executing on, or a fund that is maybe rolling up a portfolio for even a larger sale, so on and so forth. So, and then the second part of your question was what again, or the first part?
Decision, like what made you like, okay, now's the time to,
I think it's every evolution that an entrepreneur goes through mentally, because when you first get into the game, you're like, I need money. I want to be free.
Yeah.
I want money. And the underlying thing, even now as a Muslim, and something that I make dua for is, Ya Allah, allow me to break free from the chains of this dunya, right? And if you think about the chains of this dunya, one of them are the need for money, right? So in reality, like you simply put more money, right?
Yeah.
But and that might seem very superficial, but when you realize that with more money, there's two things that you need to do drastic change on an ummah level: more capital and more power, more influence and more power. The only reason that we're not moving the needle on an ummah level is because we have maybe one or two, or the people in those positions are not doing what's needed, right? So to go back to the question is, okay, alhamdulillah, Allah has gotten me to this stage. Phase one, develop a business, cash flow, learn. Okay, now in order for me to have the creative dangerousness or the creative arsenal to build a ummah moving level vehicle, I need escape velocity. You can't do that even on a 50, 100, 200, 250, even if you're cash flowing 300K per month or whatnot. You need like escape velocity level of money. And that liquidation event most often comes through an exit, right? So if you even zoom out more, the game of entrepreneurship is as follows, or anyone looking to build wealth for Muslims. You learn business, but if you zoom out, business is an asset. So the game is learning how to build an asset, how to sell an asset, and then phase two is learn how to acquire more assets, the level of the assets that you're acquiring, and then continue to sell, right? And trade is at the essence of being a Muslim. And there's so many hadith about, the essence of trade, and that, I'm sure everyone knows, but that in reality, we have to trade businesses now. We need to buy and sell businesses. We need to make ummah level needle moving moves like this. So to answer your question, brother, it's like, okay, by the fadl of Allah and the permission of Allah, we've conquered this mountain. But in order for me to conquer the next, I need escape velocity. And the way to do that is through a liquidation event.
Did you have like your exit strategy in mind? Like, was it time-based? Was it revenue-based? And then you're reaching those goals, or it's kind of like you kind of figured it out along the way? I've seen it done multiple ways, right? Sometimes people are just exhausted.
Yeah. The note of transparency to anyone watching, I think this is a valley I'm going through for the first time. I've learned about it in, the classrooms of McCombs, but this is the first time I'm going through it. I think the thought materialized and solidified in my mind at the top of this year. And I thought it was, easier said than, as is the case whenever you're doing anything for the first time. I thought it was going to be a little bit easier than, the hole goes deeper essentially. So now to answer your question, brother, I know the target where I'm going. like what I want for the exit valuation and the trailing 12 and the multiple that I get for comparable companies in my niche. So now I just need to hit the trailing 12-month EBITDA target that when you reverse engineer, you get that number. So that's all I have up until now. I have a few contacts developed by the grace of Allah that I plan on engaging when that time comes, or when maybe we experience a good quarter and we're on track to hit that trailing 12-month number. But beyond that, it's more so right now, it's like grow the business, make sure it doesn't dip, and develop the network. So when the time comes, those decision triggers, we pull the trigger, inshallah.
Inshallah. Well, Hamza, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thank you, bro.
It's been a blessing. Every time we get to chat with you, wherever it is, we leave with a little bit more wisdom. So
Thank you, brother.
Jazakallah khairan for joining the Caravan podcast, and looking forward to having you again, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Post exit.
Thank you. Inshallah.
Thank you.